Neville, a subject we've covered a couple of times over the last few years is bait, but it's a subject that you can always go back to because there's always more to learn about it and more information to be had, isn't there?
Chris, bait, live bait is that important that you can't cover it all in one sitting.
Yeah, right.
It's that important. What I thought we'd take off on this morning is whiting, because that's the sort of thing that are around more at this time of year.
Okay.
And the couple of the things that we use for catching whiting, firstly, we use the worms. Now, that's the way we in the shop sell them in water, keep like that for a couple of days without any worry.
Right.
But have a look at this monster. I brought this one around. It's a kingworm, what we call a kingworm, this.
It's a big worm, Neville, isn't it?
And that's even broke off.
Yeah.
And a little bit more has broke off him. Now that is magic worm for dew.
Is it?
Oh, marvellous worm.
Because the dews would pull them out of the beach, wouldn't they?
Yes,
at high
sure.
tide,
And
pull
so
them out
do
of
the
the banks.
whiting. Well, if you see a whiting feeding, he hits the sand and goes under the sand.
Does he?
And he kind of comes
Scoops
up
it up with his nose.
Yeah, just scoops that worm out as he goes and gets it out.
Obviously, I mean, it confirms the point that the natural food of the fish must always be the best bait.
Yep, wherever you are, pick the natural food and you've got to be right.
Yeah.
The hook to use with worms is 3191, and it's a mustard number, that. And I've got a number 4 here, but a number 5 is the best for the for the worms. Why I brought the 4 out is because of the next one with the yabbies, which I'm going to show.
Yeah, right.
Now, just all you've got to do with the worm is put the worm on the hook and just pull it up over the eye, and that stops it from slipping back off the hook.
Right.
So you can just have a complete...
cover the knot as well.
Yes, just cover it right up. Now, another reason you use a long shank is that when the whiting takes it down, those big ones normally suck it down, right down into their neck. And if you're trying to get out a short shanked hook, it's damn near impossible. So what you do, you use a long shank, and usually you get hold of it to get it out of the hook without much worry, especially if it's a small fish that you don't want to damage before you return it to the water.
Of course.
Okay?
Right.
Now the next bait that we'll come into is the yabby.
Yeah.
Now, if you're fishing for whiting, go into your friendly tackle dealer and say, hey, pick me up the small ones, will you? Now, the reason you do that is because if you get a fellow like this one here, and they get a lot bigger than that with bigger claws on, they darn near fight a fish off.
Yeah, we've said before, you don't want your bait fighting the fish off, do you?
That's right. So if you ask to pick a small yabby, like this fella here, and you see the size of him?
Yeah, the whiting's more likely to tackle him.
The whiting will tackle him, and he goes on that hook real nice.
Right.
And you can slip that right through. You see that? Now that will come right through and just pinch his tail out over, and I'll pop that through there just to show you the way to do it.
Yeah.
Just slip that through there like that. And for whiting, it is okay just to come slightly outside the body there, and then in through the hard gill cage area of the head like that.
Through his carapace.
Then just push that up there like that, and Bob's your uncle. And did you notice the way I got that hook out of that packet?
Yes.
I didn't tear the top off and tip them all out on my hand, etc. What I did was, I shook one loose, and then I passed it out through the plastic. Now the reason I do that is that none of the other hooks are touched by my saltwatery hands.
Right, and they won't rust.
And they won't rust. And if you keep them like that in your tackle box, great. That's the one I use for brim. It's a 4190 mustard, of course, always mustard.
Right.
And it's a number 1. Now you can go to a 10, which is a little bit bigger, but I prefer to stick to the number 1. You'll catch big fish on that. And you can go to one of those bigger fellas. Now the first thing you do with this bloke is to take that claw off. You don't want that. You don't want him, as we said, fighting off the fish.
Fighting off the fish,
And then exactly the same thing with the whiting.
Slide the hook through,
And allow your hook to come out of the side there.
Yeah.
Just before the head.
Yeah.
And then back in through the hard gill cage area of the head. And push the tail up over the eye of the hook. Now if the yabby is long enough, he'll come up over the eye and he'll hang on the hook like that.
Right. So he looks very natural.
Yes, that's right. That's the
floating.
main thing. What you've got to do is get your baits as natural as possible.
Right.
Now the way to get these yabbies, of course, is to pump them up with one of old Les Wilson's, I'm better not call him old, he'll shoot me. Les Wilson's yabby pumps, or LV, Mr. LV makes them also, and does a very good job also. That's a stainless pump, of course, and it's just a matter of pumping the yabbies out of the sand.
Yeah.
Now you can also get a bloodworm, which you get out of the mud. Now that can be, or wriggleworm, and it's very good for whiting and can also be pumped out of the mud with the pump.
So you get those accidentally when you're pumping for yabbies?
Yes, you do, but you can specifically go and get the worms with that pump.
Right.
Yep, sure.
Okay. Now one other bait that we've never really touched on seriously is squid. It's a bait that I've never had much success with, but apparently it also is a fish killer in the right circumstances.
Oh, yes. Out on the reef we use it all the time for snapper, of course. Up in the bay, up in Moreton Bay, you know those winter whiting they catch by the hundreds, they catch them on squid.
Do they?
They cut it in and this is the fellow we're talking about. Now they cut them up in small worm-like pieces, okay? And they cut this part here up. They disregard that head there, they take the head off and they use that. They cut it into worm-like strips and use that. Now
that's actually calamari there, Neville, isn't it? That's what they use for calamari. It's delicious, yeah.
Yeah, right. And the way to catch those is by using what we call a squid jig. Now that's a cheap one. What it is, it's just a bright coloured bubble with a kind of a teeth underneath it there.
Yeah, like a grappling hook almost.
Yes, that's right. And you can buy these in various forms. Now that one there is a real killer for squid.
Because it looks like a prawn.
Yes, because it looks like a prawn. And the squid just comes up to the prawn and he passes his tentacles over it like that, and Bob's your uncle. He gets snagged on them at the bottom there.
Right.
And of course this here is just a light which will attract the squid, or you can put it on a fishing line and drop it down at night time to attract the snapper.
Neville, let's talk about that next week, because that deserves an entirely different thing. We're out of time. We'll see you next week and we'll have a talk about that.
Okay.
Good.